Dad, what does sloppy seconds mean? My 8-year-old son Ben asked this over his cereal, milk dripping from his spoon. Those innocent blue eyes staring at me like I held all the answers in the world. I nearly choked on my coffee. Where'd you hear that, buddy? I managed, glancing toward the kitchen where my wife, Elena, was supposedly making her protein smoothie. The blender wasn't running. Mom was on the phone last night. She said you were her sloppy seconds and laughed really loud. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering against our Italian marble floor. Elena's voice drifted from the kitchen, honey-sweet and fake as always. Nick, everything okay out there? Just peachy, I called back, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest like a pressure cooker about to blow. Ben kept eating his cereal, oblivious to the fact that his innocent question had just lit the fuse on a bomb that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. I'm Nick Callahan, 38 years old, owner of Callahan Construction. I build things for a living, houses, dreams, futures. I'm good with my hands, better with tools than with words, and I've spent the last 10 years building what I thought was a perfect life with Elena. She walked into the dining room then, all 5'7" of her, blonde hair perfectly styled, even at 7 in the morning, wearing yoga pants that probably cost more than most people's rent. Elena Martinez Callahan, former model turned PR consultant, whatever that even meant. She had that look, the one that used to make my heart race, now just made my stomach turn. What happened here? She asked, surveying the broken mug with mild annoyance. Accident, I said, kneeling to pick up the pieces. Ben, finish your breakfast. School in 20 minutes. Elena's phone buzzed. It always buzzed. She glanced at it and I caught something in her expression. A flicker of excitement, maybe guilt. She turned away quickly. I've got an early meeting, she announced. Won't be home until late. Another meeting, another late night. Another lie, I was starting to realize. With who? I asked casually, sweeping ceramic shards into my palm. Maya's handling a new client. Big Hollywood producer. Very hush-hush. Elena grabbed her designer purse, kissed Ben's forehead, and headed for the door. She paused, looking back at me with those green eyes that used to melt my resolve. Try not to break anything else today, Nick. The front door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with Ben, and a growing certainty that my marriage was built on lies. That evening, after dropping Ben at my mother's house for a sleepover, I did something I'd never done before. I followed my wife. Elena's meeting was at a massive mansion in the Hollywood Hills, the kind of place where real power lived behind gates and security cameras. I parked my pickup truck 3 blocks away and walked, using skills I'd learned in the Army 20 years ago and hoped I'd never need again. The party was in full swing. Through the windows, I could see beautiful women in expensive dresses, older men in suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage. And there was Elena, laughing at something a silver-haired man was whispering in her ear, her hand resting on his chest in a way that made my temper flare. I circled the house, looking for a better vantage point. The pool area was darker, less crowded. I scaled the fence easily, construction work keeps you in shape, and crept closer to the house. That's when I saw Maya, Elena's younger sister, 25 and gorgeous in that dangerous way that gets men in trouble. She was talking to a group of women near the pool, gesturing animatedly. I couldn't hear the words, but her body language was all business. She was organizing something. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Remember, girls, Maya's voice carried across the water? These men pay premium for discretion and service. No names, no personal information, and absolutely no emotional attachment. This is business. The women nodded and I felt my world tilt sideways. This wasn't a party. It was a briefing. I was so focused on the conversation that I didn't notice the security guard until his hand landed on my shoulder. Hey, what the heck are you doing back here? I spun around, coming face to face with a mountain of muscle in a black suit. Behind him, another guard was speaking into a radio. Just looking for the bathroom, I said, raising my hands. Sure you were, buddy. Let's go have a chat with Mr. Royce. That's when I ran. I sprinted toward the pool, the guards shouting behind me. Without thinking, I dove into the deep end, swimming underwater toward the far edge. When I surfaced, gasping, the guards were running around the pool toward me. I hauled myself out and kept running, vaulting over a hedge and landing hard on the other side. My shoulders screamed in protest, but I didn't stop until I reached my truck, soaking wet and shaking with adrenaline. Back home, I sat in my dark kitchen, replaying what I'd seen. Elena wasn't having an affair. She was running something much worse, and Maya wasn't just her sister. She was her business partner. I opened my laptop and did something else I'd never done before. I searched through Elena's files. She'd left it unlocked, confident in her secrets. Or maybe she just didn't think I was smart enough to figure it out. That was her first mistake. The folder was labeled fitness schedules, but the contents told a different story. Bank statements showing deposits of thousands of dollars every week. Text messages with men whose names I recognized from the news. Politicians, actors, business moguls, and photos. Lots of photos. My hands shook as I scrolled through message after message. Elena coordinating appointments. Maya managing schedules. Other women I didn't recognize discussing clients and services. Then I found the conversation that made my blood freeze. Elena. Nick's getting suspicious. Asking too many questions. Unknown. Want me to handle it? Elena. Not yet. He's too stupid to figure anything out. Just my sloppy seconds husband, living off my success. Unknown. If he becomes a problem... Elena. I know, trust me, I know exactly how to handle Nick Callahan. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, listening to the house settle around me. In 12 hours, my son's innocent question had revealed the truth about my marriage, my wife, and my life. Elena wasn't just cheating on me. She was running an escort service for Hollywood's elite, using our home as a base of operations, and laughing about it with her clients. But what really burned was that last message. She thought I was too stupid to figure it out, too weak to do anything about it. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The Rusty Anchor wasn't the kind of place Elena would ever set foot in. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and beer that came in bottles, not glasses. Perfect for the conversation I needed to have. Vic Morrison sat across from me in a corner booth, nursing his third whiskey. Retired LAPD detective, 62 years old, with hands like anvils and eyes that had seen too much. His wife had left him 6 months ago for a yoga instructor half her age. You sure about this, Nick? Vic asked, his voice gravelly from 30 years of cigarettes. Once you start digging into this kind of thing, there's no going back. I'm sure. I slid the printed screenshots across the table. Look at these messages. Vic studied them, his expression darkening. Jesus Christ. Your wife's running a high-end escort ring? Her and her sister Maya, maybe others. I took a long pull from my beer. The question is, what do I do about it? Divorce lawyer, Vic said immediately. Take these to a good attorney, get custody of your boy, and walk away clean. She thinks I'm too stupid to figure it out. Called me her sloppy seconds to our son. The words tasted bitter. I want her to know exactly how smart I can be. Vic leaned back, studying me. You want revenge. I want justice. Same thing sometimes. He drained his whiskey. What do you need? Before I could answer, 2 more men approached our table. Miguel Santos, a successful restaurant owner whose wife had cleaned out their joint accounts before disappearing to Cabo with her personal trainer. And Dr. David Lee, a quiet surgeon whose wife had been blackmailing him with threats to destroy his medical career. Gentlemen, I said, gesturing to the empty chairs, thanks for coming. We'd met at a support group for divorced men, ironic since I wasn't divorced yet. But Elena's betrayal had led me to seek out others who understood what it felt like to be systematically destroyed by someone you'd trusted with everything. You said you had a proposition, Miguel said, settling his bulk into the chair. Despite his success, he looked tired, defeated. Something about getting our lives back. Not getting them back, I corrected. Getting even. I laid out what I'd discovered about Elena's operation. The men listened in silence, their expressions shifting from surprise to anger to something harder. So what's the plan? Dr. Lee asked quietly. He was the most reserved of the group, but I'd learned that still waters run deep. You want us to help expose your wife's business? I want us to help expose all of them. I pulled out my phone and showed them the client list I'd photographed from Elena's laptop. Look at these names. Vic whistled low. That's the mayor's chief of staff, and that producer who won the Oscar last year. And isn't that Senator Williams' campaign manager, Miguel finished. Holy crap, Nick. This goes all the way to the top. Which means we have to be smart about it, I said. No rushing in, no half measures. We do this right or we don't do it at all. Dr. Lee leaned forward. What did you have in mind? I outlined my plan. It was ambitious, maybe crazy, but it was thorough. We'd document everything, gather evidence that couldn't be disputed, and then bring down the entire network in one coordinated strike. I can handle surveillance, Vic offered. Still got contacts in the department who owe me favors. I've got money, Miguel said. Whatever equipment you need, whatever it costs. And I've got access to medical records, Dr. Lee added quietly. If these women are working as escorts, they'll need regular STD testing. I can find out which clinics they're using. That's perfect. I felt a surge of satisfaction. For the first time since Ben's innocent question, I felt like I had some control. We start tomorrow night. Elena's got another meeting at the same mansion. We spent the next hour planning. Vic would handle exterior surveillance while I tried to get inside the house. Miguel would monitor Elena's financial accounts, looking for patterns. Dr. Lee would start tracing the medical connections. One more thing, I said as we prepared to leave. This stays between us until we're ready to move. These people have money and power. If they find out what we're doing, they won't, Vic said grimly. We're going to be very, very careful. The next evening, I kissed Ben goodnight and told him I was going to work late on a job site. The lie came easier than I'd expected. Maybe I was learning from Elena. The mansion was hosting another party, but this time, I was prepared. Vic was positioned across the street with a telephoto lens, documenting everyone who went in and out. I had a small camera clipped to my shirt pocket and a plan to get inside. The catering truck arrived at 8 p.m. sharp. I'd done my homework. The company was owned by a guy who owed me a favor from a kitchen renovation I'd done on the cheap. One phone call, and I was wearing a server's uniform, walking through the front door like I belonged there. The party was smaller than the previous night, more intimate. I recognized several faces from the client list, powerful men who could destroy careers with a phone call. They were mingling with beautiful women, but the atmosphere felt transactional, businesslike. I moved through the crowd, serving drinks and listening to conversations. In the corner, Maya was talking to a woman I didn't recognize, handing her an envelope. Room 12, Maya was saying. He likes to talk first, so be patient, and remember, he's very particular about discretion. The woman nodded and headed upstairs. I followed at a distance, my camera recording everything. The upstairs hallway was dimmer, lined with doors that led to what I assumed were bedrooms. I watched the woman disappear into room 12, then positioned myself near the staircase where I could monitor the hallway. Over the next 2 hours, I documented a parade of transactions. Women going into rooms with men, emerging 30 minutes to an hour later. Maya coordinating everything like a general commanding troops. But it was the conversation I overheard near the kitchen that made my blood run cold. The husband's becoming a problem, a man was saying. I recognized the voice, Calvin Royce, the silver-haired producer I'd seen with Elena. Nick? Elena's voice. He's harmless, too focused on his little construction projects to pay attention to what really matters. Maybe, but Vic Morrison's been asking questions around the precinct. Your husband's been seen with him. My heart stopped. How did they know about Vic? I can handle Nick, Elena said confidently. He worships me. Always has. A few tears and some promises to change, maybe a weekend in Napa, and he'll forget all about this. And if he doesn't? There was a pause. When Elena spoke again, her voice was different, colder. Then we handle him the way we handled Miguel's wife's trainer. What happened to Miguel's wife's trainer? Royce asked. Car accident. Very tragic, very final. I nearly dropped my tray. They weren't just running an escort service. They were eliminating threats. I backed away from the kitchen, my mind racing. I needed to get out, needed it to warn the others. But as I turned toward the front door, I found my path blocked by 2 men in dark suits. Excuse me, one of them said politely. Mr. Royce would like a word. I was trapped. Nick Callahan, Calvin Royce said, settling into the leather chair across from me like a king holding court. Husband, father, small business owner, Army veteran, honorable discharge, clean credit, no criminal record. Boring, really, except for your recent hobby of playing private detective. We were in what looked like a home office, all dark wood and expensive art. The 2 men in suits stood by the door, hands folded, watching me with professional interest. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was calculating distances, exits, tools. I think you have me confused with someone else, I said. I'm just here with the catering crew. Royce smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. And the catering crew that doesn't know you exist? The one whose owner received a very interesting phone call this afternoon from someone claiming to be you? Crap. They'd been watching me longer than I'd thought. Here's what's going to happen, Nick. Royce leaned forward. You're going to forget everything you think you saw here tonight. You're going to go home to your beautiful wife and your son, and you're going to live your quiet little life. You're going to stop meeting with retired police detectives and divorced restaurant owners. You're going to mind your own business. And if I don't, then you'll join Miguel's wife's trainer in that car accident I mentioned. Royce's smile widened. Except yours won't be an accident. It'll be self-inflicted. Distraught husband, failing business, history of depression. Very believable. One of the suits stepped forward, but Royce held up a hand. I don't think that will be necessary. Nick here is a smart man. He understands the situation. Royce stood, straightening his jacket. Don't you, Nick? I nodded slowly. Crystal clear. Excellent. Marcus will show you out. The suit named Marcus escorted me to the front door, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Just before we reached the exit, he leaned close. Mr. Royce is a reasonable man, he murmured, but his patience has limits. So does mine. I walked to the catering truck on unsteady legs, my mind reeling. They knew about Vic, about Miguel, probably about Dr. Lee, too. Worse, they'd ended before. Miguel's wife's trainer hadn't died in an accident. He'd been ended. I drove home in a daze, parking in my driveway and sitting in the dark for a long time. Through the living room window, I could see Elaine on the couch, watching television like nothing had happened. Like her husband hadn't just been threatened with homicide. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Beautiful family. Would hate for anything to happen to them. Attached was a photo of Ben walking into his school that morning. They were threatening my son. I sat there in my truck, hands shaking with rage, and made a decision. If they wanted to play hardball, I'd show them what a real fight looked like. But first, I needed to warn the others. I called Vic from a gas station payphone. Old habits from the Army, where we'd learned that cell phones could be tracked. He answered on the second ring. We're blown, I said without preamble. They know about all of us. Silence, then how bad? Bad enough that they threatened Ben. We need to meet, tonight. The usual place in an hour. And Nick, watch your back. The rusty anchor was nearly empty when I arrived. Vic, Miguel, and Dr. Lee were already there, huddled in our corner booth. They looked as shaken as I felt. They ended him, Miguel said without preamble. Roberto, my wife's trainer. I thought it was an accident, but I did some digging after you called. Brake lines were cut. Dr. Lee nodded grimly. I checked the medical records. 3 women have died in the past 2 years. All former escorts who tried to leave the organization. All ruled self-inflicted deaths or accidents. Whoa, I breathed. We're not just dealing with paid hookups. This is organized crime. Which means we're in over our heads, Vic said. These aren't amateurs, Nick. They've got money, connections, and they're willing to silence people to protect their operation. So what do you suggest? We just walk away? I suggest we be very, very smart about this. Vic leaned forward. You want revenge? Fine, but we do it right or we all end up dead. I told them about my conversation with Royce, about the threats against Ben. By the time I finished, all 3 men looked ready for war. They made a mistake, Dr. Lee said quietly. Threatening your son crosses a line. Agreed, Miguel said. But we need a new plan, something they won't see coming. Vic pulled out a notebook, his detective instincts taking over. Let's think about this logically. They're running a criminal enterprise. That means they have vulnerabilities, money trails, communication records, witness testimony. And enemies, I added. An operation this big, this successful, they've made people angry. Competitors, former clients, maybe law enforcement. I might know someone, Vic said slowly. Detective Sarah Ramos, works organized crime. She's been investigating high-end paid arrangement rings for years. If we could get her solid evidence they can't dispute or cover up, Dr. Lee said. Something that would force a federal investigation. I have an idea, I said, but it's risky. And it means going back to that mansion. They listened as I outlined my plan. It was dangerous, maybe reckless, but it was also our only chance at taking down the entire organization. You're talking about infiltrating their operation, Miguel said, getting inside their inner circle. Elena thinks I'm too stupid to be a threat. That's our advantage. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. She's about to learn how wrong she is. 2 days later, I put the first phase of the plan into motion. I came home from work to find Elena in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt. Maybe fear. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Interesting," I said, hanging my jacket on the back of a chair. "Ran into Calvin Royce at the hardware store." Elena's hand froze halfway to the wine glass. "Calvin Royce?" "Yeah, the producer. Funny thing, he seemed to know all about me, my business, my family, even where Ben goes to school." I opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer, watching Elena's reflection in the stainless steel door. Almost like someone had been talking about me. "That's strange," Elena said. "I mean, I might have mentioned you to some clients. You know how networking works." "Sure." I turned around, leaning against the counter. "He also mentioned something about you and Maya running some kind of consulting business. Very exclusive, very discreet." Elena's face went pale. "Nick, I can explain." "Can you?" I stepped closer and she backed against the island. "Because I'm having trouble understanding how my wife's PR consulting involves late-night meetings with married men and envelopes full of cash." "You don't understand?" "Then explain it to me." My voice was quiet, controlled. "Explain why our joint account has been receiving deposits of $5,000 every week. Explain why you have a separate phone that you think I don't know about. Explain why Calvin Royce threatened to end me if I kept asking questions." Elena's composure cracked. "He threatened you? Surprised? Or just disappointed that he told me instead of just doing it?" "Nick, please, you have to listen to me." Elena reached for my hands, but I pulled away. "It's not what you think. What I think is that my wife is a criminal. What I think is that she's been lying to me for years, using our home as a base of operations for an escort service, and laughing about it with her clients." I set my beer down hard enough that foam spilled over the rim. "What I think is that she called me her sloppy seconds to our 8-year-old son." Elena's face crumpled. "You heard that? Ben heard it. Our son knows his mother thinks his father is a joke. I never meant—" "Yes, you did." I moved toward the door, then stopped. "Pack a bag, Elena, tonight. I want you out of this house." "You can't throw me out. This is my home, too." "Actually, I can." I pulled a folded document from my jacket pocket. "Restraining order. Filed this morning based on threats made against me and my son. You've got 1 hour to pack your things and then you're gone." Elena stared at the papers, her face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. "This isn't over, Nick." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But it's about to be." She left that night, taking 2 suitcases and a lot of expensive jewelry. I watched from the window as she loaded her car, then drove away into the darkness. Phase 1 was complete. Now the real work could begin. Elena's first counterattack came 3 days later. I arrived at work to find 2 police officers waiting by my truck, their expressions professionally neutral. "Mr. Callahan? I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Johnson. We need to ask you some questions about domestic violence allegations." My stomach dropped. "What allegations?" "Your wife filed a complaint yesterday. Says you threatened her, destroyed property, and made her fear for her safety." Martinez consulted his notebook. "She's got photos of bruises, a broken cell phone, and witness testimony." "That's BS," I said, but kept my voice calm. Getting angry would only make things worse. "I never touched her. Mind if we look around your truck?" "Your work site?" I minded, but refusing would look suspicious. "Go ahead." They didn't find anything because there was nothing to find, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. Elena had played this perfectly. Just enough evidence to make me look guilty. Not enough to press charges immediately. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Callahan," Johnson said as they prepared to leave. "And, sir, maybe stay away from your wife while this gets sorted out." After they left, I called Vic. "She's trying to discredit you," he said. "Make you look like a cruel husband so nobody believes anything you say about her business." "It's working. Half my crew was watching those cops search my truck. Word gets around, I'll lose contracts. Then we accelerate the timeline. How soon can you be ready?" "Tonight," I said. "Elena's staying at Maya's condo. If we're going to do this, now's the time." That evening, I parked 2 blocks from Maya's building and walked the rest of the way. Lee had done his homework. Maya lived in a high-security complex, but the building's cleaning service was run by Miguel's cousin. 1 phone call, and I had a maintenance uniform and a keycard. I took the service elevator to the 15th floor, my heart pounding. If Elena or Maya were home, this would end badly. But I'd been watching the building for 2 hours, and both women had left in Maya's BMW around 7 p.m. Maya's apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, designer everything, and absolutely no personal touches. It felt like a hotel room, sterile and temporary. I found what I was looking for in the bedroom closet, hidden behind a false panel that would have fooled most people. But I'd been in construction for 15 years. I knew how to find hidden spaces. The safe was small but sophisticated. Fortunately, Dr. Lee had anticipated this. The electronic lockpick he'd provided was military grade, designed for situations where subtlety mattered more than speed. It took me 20 minutes to crack the safe. Inside, I found a treasure trove of evidence. Client files with photos and personal information, financial records showing millions in transactions, and most importantly, a ledger detailing payments to police officers, judges, and politicians. I photographed everything with a high-resolution camera, making sure to capture every detail. This wasn't just evidence of paid arrangement activity, it was proof of a massive corruption network that reached into the highest levels of government. I was so focused on the documents that I almost missed the sound of the front door opening. "Told you he's not smart enough to be a real threat," Elena's voice carried from the living room. "A few legal maneuvers, maybe some pressure on his business, and he'll fold like a cheap suit." "I hope you're right," Maya replied, "because Calvin is getting nervous. He's talking about permanent solutions." "It won't come to that. Nick's all bark, no bite. He'll take whatever settlement I offer and disappear." I closed the safe carefully, making sure it looked undisturbed, and moved toward the bedroom window. 15 floors up, but the building had external fire escapes, a violation of current building codes, but useful for my purposes. "Pour me a wine," Elena said. "It's been a long day of playing the victim." I slipped out onto the fire escape just as footsteps approached the bedroom. Through the window, I watched Elena enter, kicking off her heels and reaching for the closet door. She froze, staring at the safe. Even from outside, I could see her face go white. "Maya," she screamed. "Maya, get in here." I didn't wait to see what happened next. I climbed down the fire escape as quickly as I dared, dropped to the alley, and walked calmly to my truck. By the time Elena and Maya figured out what had happened, I was already uploading the photos to a secure server. My phone rang before I'd driven 2 blocks. "You're finished." Elena's voice was pure venom. "Do you hear me, Nick? You're completely finished." "Probably," I agreed, "but so are you. Check your email in about 10 minutes. I hung up and called Vic. "It's done," I said. "Everything we need is on its way to Detective Ramos. Financial records, client lists, corruption evidence, the whole thing." "Jesus, Nick, you actually did it. How much time do you think we have?" "Not much. Elena knows the safe was compromised. They'll be moving assets, warning clients, maybe running. Then we better move fast. I'll call Ramos now, make sure she understands how big this is. And Vic, tell her to move on this tonight. By tomorrow, half these people will be on planes to countries without extradition treaties." I drove home, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. Ben was at my mother's house for the week. I'd sent him there as soon as Elena moved out, claiming I needed time to work on the house. Really, I'd wanted him safe while this played out. The house felt empty without him, but also peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells, wasn't wondering what lies Elena was telling or what schemes she was planning. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my living room waiting for the phone to ring. It didn't take long. "Mr. Callahan?" The voice was professional, female. "This is Detective Sarah Ramos, LAPD Organized Crime. I understand you have information about a criminal enterprise." "Yes, ma'am. I believe Detective Morrison filled you in on the basics." "He did. I've reviewed the materials you provided, and I have to say, this is bigger than anything we've seen. We're talking about federal charges, racketeering, money laundering, corruption of public officials. How long before you can move on it?" "We're executing search warrants tonight. Mr. Callahan, I need you to understand something. These people are dangerous. They've ended before, and they'll end again if they feel cornered." "I understand. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay? Family out of state, maybe?" I thought about it. "My brother lives in Phoenix, but, Detective, I'm not running. These people threatened my son. I want to see this through. I respect that. But please, be careful. We'll have a unit patrol your neighborhood, but we can't provide round-the-clock protection." After she hung up, I called my mother to check on Ben. "He's fine, honey," she said, "watching movies and eating too much popcorn. But Nick, he's asking questions about why he can't go home. What kind of questions? About you and Elena. He's not stupid, sweetheart. He knows something's wrong. Tell him Daddy's working on fixing things. And Mom, don't let him out of your sight, not even for a minute. Nick, you're scaring me. Good. Stay scared until this is over. I hung up and poured another whiskey. Outside, I could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer. The war was about to begin in earnest. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. You have 24 hours to make this go away. After that, we start with your mother's house. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, come and get me. The response came immediately. We will. The attack came at 3 a.m., just like I'd expected. They thought they were dealing with a civilian, someone who'd panic and make mistakes in the dark. They were wrong. I'd spent the evening preparing. Motion sensors in the yard, cameras covering every approach, and a few surprises left over from my army days. When you've spent time in the Middle East, you learn that the best defense is knowing your enemy is coming. The first motion sensor triggered at 2:47 a.m., two figures moving through the backyard, trying to stay in the shadows. I watched them on my laptop screen from the second floor, counting their tools, noting their positions. 3 more came through the front, using lockpicks on my door like they had all the time in the world. Professional, but not military. Probably private security, the kind of men who looked intimidating in suits but had never been in a real fight. I let them get inside before I made my move. The flashbang grenade, a leftover from my deployment that I'd never turned in, went off in the living room with a bang that shook the windows. While they were blind and deaf, I came down the stairs fast and quiet. The first man was stumbling around, hands over his ears. I hit him with a baseball bat across the back of his knees, and he went down hard. The second was reaching for his tool when I tackled him, driving my shoulder into his ribs and slamming him against the wall. "Where's Royce?" I demanded, pressing my forearm against his throat. "Go to heck," he gasped. I increased the pressure. Wrong answer. Warehouse. Downtown, 7th Street. The third man came around the corner then, tool drawn but moving too slow. I threw my knife, a skill learned in basic training and perfected in combat, and caught him in the shoulder. He dropped the tool, screaming. The 2 from the backyard burst through the sliding door just as police sirens filled the air. Detective Ramos had been as good as her word. Patrol units were watching the house. "LAPD, drop your tools!" The backyard team tried to run, but they were caught in the floodlights I'd rigged to the motion sensors. Game over. I sat on my front steps, hands zip-tied behind my back, watching the police process the scene. 5 men in custody, enough tools to outfit a small army, and evidence of conspiracy to commit homicide. Detective Ramos approached, looking tired but satisfied. "You okay, Mr. Callahan?" "Better than them," I said, nodding toward the ambulance where the man I'd stabbed was being treated. "Did they talk?" "Oh, they talked, especially after we told them about the federal charges they're facing." She pulled out her notebook. "Calvin Royce is in custody. So are Elena and Maya. We hit 12 locations simultaneously. Safe houses, offices, even a yacht in Marina del Rey. And the clients? That's where it gets interesting. Turns out several of them were already under federal investigation for other crimes. Your evidence just gave us the leverage we needed to flip them." She cut my zip ties, and I rubbed my wrists, trying to get circulation back. "What happens now?" "Now you testify. This is going to be the biggest organized crime case in LA history, and you're the star witness." Ramos studied my face. "You sure you're ready for that? These people have lawyers, connections, money. They'll try to destroy you in court. Let them try." 2 weeks later, I stood in federal court, raising my right hand to swear an oath to tell the truth. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, law enforcement, curious onlookers drawn by the scandal. Elena sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. When our eyes met, I saw no remorse, no regret. Just pure hatred. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Walsh, led me through my testimony. How I'd discovered the escort ring, how I'd gathered evidence, how they'd threatened my family. I kept my voice steady, professional, letting the facts speak for themselves. Elena's lawyer tried to paint me as a jealous husband, a man who'd fabricated evidence to destroy his wife's legitimate business. But the photographs, the financial records, the witness testimony from other victims, it was all too much to dismiss. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I testified 4 times, each appearance more damaging to Elena's case. Maya broke first, agreeing to testify against her sister in exchange for a reduced sentence. Then, Calvin Royce's accountant flipped, bringing boxes of financial records that traced money from the escort service to offshore accounts. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Elena was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Maya got 8 years. Calvin Royce got 25 to life. Turns out the feds had been after him for years on unrelated charges, and the escort ring was just the final nail in his coffin. I walked out of the courthouse into bright California sunshine, breathing free air for the first time in months. The reporters shouted questions, but I ignored them. I had somewhere else to be. Ben was waiting at my mother's house, playing video games and pretending he hadn't been watching the news coverage. He looked up when I entered, his young face serious. "Is it over, Dad?" "It's over, buddy. Is Mom going to jail?" I sat down next to him, choosing my words carefully. "Mom made some very bad choices. She hurt people, including us. Now she has to face the consequences." "Are you sad?" I thought about it. "I'm sad that she chose to lie to us. I'm sad that she chose money over her family. But I'm not sad that she got caught." Ben nodded, processing this with the resilience that kids somehow manage. "Dad, what does sloppy seconds really mean?" I pulled him into a hug, this boy who'd started it all with an innocent question at breakfast. "It means your mom was wrong about everything that matters," I said. "And it means we're going to be just fine." 6 months later, I was rebuilding, literally and figuratively. Callahan Construction had more work than I could handle. Turns out being the guy who brought down a major criminal conspiracy was good for business. I'd hired 3 new crews and was bidding on projects I'd never dreamed of before. Ben was thriving. He'd started seeing a counselor to help process everything that had happened, and his grades were better than ever. We'd developed new routines, new traditions, a life that was ours alone. I was in my office reviewing blueprints for a new shopping center when Detective Ramos called. "Nick, you might want to turn on the news." I found the remote and flipped to a local news channel. The reporter was standing outside a federal courthouse, looking excited. Additional charges filed today against Elena Callahan and her associates, including conspiracy to commit homicide in the death of Roberto Martinez, a personal trainer who was allegedly ended for threatening to expose the escort ring. Prosecutors say they have new evidence linking the organization to at least 3 other suspicious deaths over the past 2 years. I turned off the television and sat in silence. Roberto Martinez, Miguel's wife's trainer. They were finally getting justice for him, too. My phone rang, Miguel's number. "Did you see?" he asked without preamble. I said, "They're going to fry her, Nick. Homicide 1, conspiracy, the works. She's never getting out." "Good. You okay with that? I mean, she's still Ben's mother." I looked at a photo on my desk. Ben and me at his little league game, both of us grinning and covered in dirt. We looked happy. We looked free. "She stopped being his mother the day she chose her business over her family," I said. "We're better off without her." After Miguel hung up, I called Ben's school and told them I'd be picking him up early. We drove to the beach, bought ice cream, and walked along the water while he told me about his day. "Dad," he said as we watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "Yeah, buddy. I'm glad it's just us now." "Me too, Ben. Me too." That night, after Ben was asleep, I sat on my back porch with a beer and thought about everything that had happened. A year ago, I'd been living a lie, married to a woman who saw me as nothing more than a useful fool. Now I was free, my son was safe, and the people who'd threatened us were behind bars where they belonged. Elena had called me her sloppy seconds, thinking I was too stupid and weak to fight back. She'd learned the hard way that the quiet guy with dirty hands and a steady job could be the most dangerous enemy of all. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my blood ran cold. Was this another threat, another attempt at revenge? But it was from Dr. Lee. "Drinks tomorrow night, I'm buying." I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. We've got a lot to celebrate." The war was over. We'd won. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, the future looked bright. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something better. But tonight, I was just a father whose son was safe, whose enemies were defeated, and whose life was finally completely his own. Elena had been wrong about everything. I wasn't her sloppy seconds. I was the man who brought her down.